In the quiet Federal Heights neighborhood of Salt Lake City, Utah, on the night of June 4th, 2002, the Smart family gathered for a celebratory evening. 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart had just received several awards at her middle school ceremony, recognizing her academic excellence and physical fitness. She was a bright, talented girl who played the harp beautifully and dreamed of a future filled with promise. That night, she shared her bedroom with her younger sister, 9-year-old Mary Catherine, as they drifted off to sleep in their comfortable home. Around 1 a.m., on June 5th, Elizabeth stirred awake to feel the cold press of a knife against her throat. A man's low voice whispered urgently, commanding her to be quiet and come with him, or he would kill her and her family. Terrified, she complied, slipping out of bed without waking Mary Catherine fully. The intruder, a bearded man dressed in dark clothing, guided her silently through the house. He had entered by cutting a screen on a kitchen window, leaving only a small trace of his presence. Mary Catherine lay frozen in bed, pretending to sleep, her heart pounding as she listened to the footsteps fade away. Only after what felt like an eternity did she rush to her parents' room, whispering frantically that a man had taken Elizabeth. Ed and Lois Smart bolted awake, searching the house in disbelief. They found the cut window screen and realized the nightmare was real. Police arrived quickly, sealing off the area and beginning a massive search. Dogs tracked Elizabeth, sent a short distance from the home before losing it. The news spread rapidly, turning the abduction into a national story. Elizabeth, with her innocent face and harp-playing talent, became the focus of intense media attention. Flyers with her photo blanketed the city, and volunteers scoured the nearby hills and streets. Unbeknownst to the searchers, the kidnapper was Brian David Mitchell, a self-proclaimed prophet who called himself Emmanuel. He had briefly worked as a handyman for the Smarts months earlier after Lois encountered him panhandling downtown and offered him work out of kindness. Mitchell, along with his wife Wanda Barzy, lived on the fringes of society, embracing a nomadic, religious, extremist lifestyle. Mitchell believed he was divinely called to take multiple wives and saw Elizabeth as one of them. Mitchell forced Elizabeth on a grueling hike up the foothills behind her home, threatening her life if she cried out. After several miles, they reached a hidden campsite in the dry, rugged terrain just a few miles from her house. Wanda Barzy waited there, complicit in the plan. They performed a bizarre marriage ceremony, declaring Elizabeth as Mitchell's new wife. She was stripped of her red pajamas and given robes and veils to wear, disguised as part of their religious group. To prevent escape, they tethered her ankle with a heavy cable attached to trees or stakes, limiting her movement severely. The days blurred into a nightmare of control and abuse. Mitchell raped Elizabeth repeatedly, often multiple times a day, justifying it through twisted religious rhetoric. He claimed she was chosen for this path and must endure hardship to achieve spiritual elevation. Food was scarce. They foraged garbage or begged, leaving her hungry and weak much of the time. Alcohol and drugs were forced upon her to break her resistance. Wanda Barzy, jealous yet obedient to Mitchell, treated Elizabeth harshly, viewing her as a rival, but enforcing the rules. Elizabeth heard searchers calling her name in the distance, including her uncle once, but threats against her family's lives kept her silent. As summer progressed, the trio stayed mostly at the camp hidden in the mountains. Mitchell attempted another abduction in late July, breaking into the home of Elizabeth's cousin, but the girl woke up and screamed, forcing him to flee. In August, a detective spotted them at the Salt Lake City Library after a tip. Elizabeth, fully veiled, sat quietly as Mitchell argued religiously against removing her coverings. The detective backed off, another missed opportunity that haunted Elizabeth later. By September, with winter approaching in Utah, Mitchell decided to move south. They hitchhiked and took a bus to California, ending up in the San Diego area. There they lived in homeless camps, panhandling and rummaging through trash. Elizabeth remained disguised in robes, veils, and sometimes wigs or sunglasses. Mitchell continued the daily assaults, and the isolation deepened her despair. She endured extreme deprivation, sometimes going days with little food, and was brainwashed with constant religious indoctrination. Mitchell preached about the end times and his prophetic role, forcing her to participate in rituals. Back in Salt Lake City, the investigation dragged on. Early focus fell on another handyman, Richard Ricci, who had worked for the family and was in jail for unrelated crimes. He denied involvement and died in custody from a brain hemorrhage in August. Tips poured in, but leads went cold. The Smart family kept Elizabeth's story alive through media appearances and a website. Then in October 2002, Mary Catherine had a breakthrough. While looking at a book, she suddenly remembered the kidnapper's voice belonged to a man they knew as Emmanuel, the brief worker from the previous year. The family informed police, but authorities were slow to act, frustrating the Smarts. Months passed in California. Elizabeth persuaded Mitchell that returning to Utah would fulfill some prophecy, hoping proximity to home might lead to rescue. In early 2003, they hitchhiked back north. By February, the Smarts, impatient with police, released a sketch of Emmanuel on television, including on America's Most Wanted. Mitchell's family members recognized him, and tips flooded in identifying Brian David Mitchell. On March 12, 2003, in Sandy, Utah, just 18 miles from her home, two couples spotted the trio walking along State Street. The people were veiled in white robes, but something matched the description from a show. One couple called police, while another followed discreetly. Officers arrived and separated the group. Mitchell claimed they were a religious family, and the girl called Augustine was his daughter. Police pressed Elizabeth alone in their car. At first, fearing for her family's safety, after 9 months of threats, she hesitated. "I think you know who I am," an officer said gently. Finally, she admitted, "Thou sayest," an old-fashioned phrase Mitchell had taught her. Then clearly, "I am Elizabeth Smart." The officers confirmed her identity, and the news exploded across the nation. Elizabeth was taken to the police station, where her father, Ed, arrived, pulling her close in a tearful reunion. She was thin disguised, but alive and remarkably composed. Mitchell and Barzy were arrested on the spot. Reunited with her family, Elizabeth began the slow process of healing. She returned home, played her harp again, and celebrated a belated 15th birthday with a party. The camp in the hills was raided, revealing the cable and remnants of her captivity. Charges were filed against Mitchell and Barzy for aggravated kidnapping, sexual assault, and more. The trial process was long, complicated by competency issues for Mitchell, who sang hymns in court. Barzy eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 15 years. Mitchell was found competent, convicted in 2010, and sentenced to life in prison. Elizabeth emerged stronger, refusing to let the ordeal define her entirely. She testified bravely, graduated high school, served a mission, and built a life of advocacy. The 9 months of terror ended in freedom, a testament to her resilience and the power of hope that kept the world searching until she was found.